So I'm not going to talk too much, honestly, about the product specifically. I think Austin did a really great job talking about WASM and like why all this actually matters. And so just to kick it off, as he said, I'm Dino, one of the co-founders of Fluent, and this talk is on like how zkWasm actually enables this developer choice and like why that's impactful to the space. So I think Austin talked a little bit about this before, but everyone seems to kind of repeat the same phrase in Web3. It's like onboard the next billion users, onboard the next billion users. And one thing that's worth noting is like Web2's already done this, so I think it's worth stopping and trying to think about like how they actually did that successfully. And the way, at least from our perspective, they've done this is by empowering devs to pick the best tool for each task. So developer choice, developer flexibility and being able to optimize each application or each even specific task within like a broader application experience for the best possible user experience. And so if you actually kind of look at it in Web 2 and you kind of look at like the cloud native stack today, right? I mean, you have a tremendous amount of optionality, whether it's like container runtimes, orchestrators, a bunch of different types of databases, like whether it's a graph database or some kind of real-time thing, it's all optimized for different use cases. And then that's kind of on like the back-end services side. Obviously on like more of the front-end modules, you have different types of libraries, frameworks, tooling, all types of stuff, each with their own specific purpose. And just from our vantage point, that's how Web 2 scaled. So you have that extra developer freedom and choice. What does that give you? That ends up with 20 million plus developers who are building the 10x better apps that a billion people actually want to use. And so just to kind of double click on like how it actually got there, there's a pretty common pattern. There's, start simple, developers run into constraints, offer the developers more. I mean, that happened kind of like on the backend services. You had, these big fat monolithic applications and, developers wanted, the smart developers at AWS and Google and Netflix, et cetera, they wanted to do more, they needed more scale. And so what happened, they broke things down into these like loosely coupled services known as the microservices architecture, and that actually helped the web kind of scale to what it is today to support billions of users. And the same thing kind of happened, or is happening right now. It's a newer phenomenon, but it's happening on kind of like the front end modules. And so what started with kind of like JavaScript and got really popular, what's happening now and seen in like Netflix, Figma, Fastly, and many more, people are kind of running into the constraints of what's possible in terms of performance and flexibility, and hence, WASM is getting very popular, which I'll skip over the introductions around kind of what exactly WebAssembly is and some of those details because it was discussed before, but it is undoubtedly happening. And so let's actually dive into a specific WASM example, right? So Figma, I think everybody probably knows Figma, huge design company at this point. They made use of WASM to disrupt the entire design industry and build what is now like a $20 billion company. And the way they did this was with the unlocks that WASM actually brings. And so they basically said, like before Figma, it was really, really hard to offer kind of like an interactive, collaborative design experience. Everything was kind of like desktop native, and the unlock here was like running something in the browser, but it was kind of infeasible to do it, like practically infeasible to do it in just like JavaScript. So what they did is they leveraged WASM and were able to kind of like break down different pieces of the application. So if you see kind of on the left-hand side, there's some things like the panels on the right and the left of the Figma application that TypeScript and React do really well. So that's what they use for that part of the app. And then kind of like the core components that are more computationally intensive and needed to be updated very quickly, in this case at 60 frames per second, they use C++. And all of that was very easy to do using WebAssembly. And so let's zoom into like the state of kind of Web3 today, right? I think it was mentioned before, we have like 20,000 developers, and there's limited tooling. So we have 20K developers using kind of like EVM and Solidity, and like that's all well and good. And don't get me wrong, there's like a ton of really great innovation that's happening in terms of like kind of zk and other scaling technologies. But still, and honestly, there is still out there, and we by no means like at Fluent have the mentality that's like EVM's dead or anything like that. It's just not enough. Like developers are pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and they want to build more. And so what do? You modularize, right? And so just to kind of like map it to the Web3 parallel, the past couple of years has really been this revolution around modularity, and that's more to do with kind of like the back-end modules, like the infra modules, if you will. And so what happened, we broke these blockchains down into their kind of respective components and kind of built, scaled, and maintained them independently. And so we kind of scaled the back-end part. And right now we're at a point in time where like devs want more flexibility from almost like the front end or kind of the app modules. And that's where, from our vantage point, zkWasm comes in. And so what does zkWasm actually enable? So smart contracts in your favorite programming languages, you can kind of see on the right-hand side. And it was talked a little bit about before. So whether it's like Rust or TypeScript or C, C++, all of these are supported and can be ZK proven. But it goes beyond that. That is just the start. You can write arbitrary logic kind of using existing libraries and frameworks. So at least kind of in the Fluent context, there's kind of like the general purpose smart contract L2, and then there's like a framework using the zkWasm VM. And so you can kind of develop these experiences that span both of those, and all of the languages are kind of interoperable. So for example, you can have the back-end part of your application as smart contracts in like a Solidity, and then maybe just arbitrary logic being verified using the framework in Rust or something like that. And that's when you can kind of bring along all of the tools and frameworks and applications that are existing today, and that's where the developer learning curve really just like drops to zero. And we think that's a really powerful thing. So I'll wrap there. I think so. We definitely have the mindset that you have to empower, 1 million developers to build on chain or on Ethereum specifically to get those 1 billion users. So I'm going to end it there. If you guys want to learn more about Fluent, what we're building, feel free to find any of us. We'll be around hanging. We have a booth a little bit on the other, in the other room, and we're happy to talk all things zkWasm.